Welcome to the 16th episode of Empower Your Essence with our upcoming guest, Tony Mauk. I want to quickly introduce him and catch you up on a couple things so you can fully enjoy this podcast. First off, Tony Mauk has been a part of my life since I was a child, and we met through Boy Scouts. He is a very successful businessman, and he's lived a very unique life from starting a company to work with the Native American Pueblo Indians in New Mexico, to working in our government's defense industry, working with aircraft, working in areas of the government that not everyone has access to. So from a very cutthroat industry and having a very large amount of success there and working very hard, to giving, to serving, to working with tribes in New Mexico. He's a very unique individual with a huge heart. He started a company called Smart Tribe 275, and that's how he works with the Native Americans to support them with education and many other things. He's also written a book that's called Gateways. We'll have the link in the description as well for that. And the two things I want to catch you up on so you can enjoy this episode and jump right in. The first thing is, due to some tech stuff, we had to edit some of this stuff out because it was all garbled up. So two things that are referenced in this episode so you can fully enjoy it. The first one is Tony talks about a beautiful thing he would do with other executives in his corporate life, where they would meet up for these gatherings, these weekends, and they would basically, during this, get in a circle, and they would have this thing where they'd share stories. And it'd be a story of, what's your most embarrassing story you can share? What's the story where you were really afraid? And they would get into other topics addressing pretty common emotions that we experience in the human experience. And it would be a way of being vulnerable and bonding and creating very close friendships in the corporate world, which in that sense stereotypically is not so common. So we touch on that, and it's beautiful, a beautiful part of his story. The other thing is that when he was 12 years old, he and a friend had this bright idea to almost compete and try to one-up each other on making the best explosion. So they started with a simple firecracker, then an M80, and then they went to a CO2 cartridge, and then they went all the way up to quick paint remover. Put that in a fire, and it exploded so big that everyone in the neighborhood thought the local dynamite plant had exploded. And we reference this story because at that age, at 12, the wisdom he gained from that and the trajectory on his own way of operating, his values, his core beliefs on what's important in life and how far to take curiosity, really shaped him to who he is today. So that's also referenced. So without further ado, welcome, jump in, enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. What you and I were doing as kids,
Yeah.
right? Look at that for the rest of your life. What beauty is manifested from that massive curiosity to do something that most kids would never do. And so I'm curious to see what you think about anything that comes up in that realm of like most inspiring story, a beautiful moment, something that you'd like to share with us where you think that resonates in truth for you.
I think with me, the caption of that story is knowing limitations. The curiosity is there, but you can get hurt and you can change lives very quickly, because if I would have been closer, my friend would have been closer. Fortunately, at 12, we knew to run. We didn't know how fast and how far. And even though we have run 200, 300 yards away, at that moment, I felt that we should have run a mile, the way this explosion was taken off, right?
Yeah,
so I think that really curtailed the unlimited curiosity, because then at 12, I realized you need to put a wall up on some of this, because certain things, and probably I didn't think there would be anything I could have done to hurt others, but that moment I did. And I think that allowed me to go to such a level, such a degree that no one typically goes, that it in return made me respect life much more. because I can't imagine getting excited about that, because fear was natural, but somebody could have said, "Oh my gosh, this is fun."
Yeah, right on the other
But
side,
to
like an
me, it
actual,
was like,
pyro
oh
or
my
someone.
gosh, that was dumb. I
like,
mean,
what have
my
I
dad
done?
could have beat me. My dad fortunately never found out. But in this particular case, it really corrected my future. It was like that stopped me. Danger, anything that was dangerous, it put a major stop to it. So it was like having both parents there beating you at the same time. Yeah. Oh,
Emotionally.
Because I mean, to
Emotionally.
feel, I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever felt the fear of your legs buckling. Have either of you ever felt that? It's your leg. I mean, what happened?
Not from a
But
blast.
being
No.
fearful
not from
is
that
that
situation.
fear was, my legs were shaking so bad. Like, when you get nervous and your voice shakes, but now your whole body is shaking. And in your mind, you're thinking, how could this be happening? Because I'm going to fall. And I didn't fall, but that's how nervous I was. And I think whatever God puts us in our bodies to help us, guide us, that was a major switch. That was the master reset switch for me personally.
So it's like a massive 12-year-old life trajectory shift. Sounds like
huge,
just huge. Like you're redlining curiosity and potential danger, and then it's like it got so big with miraculously no one getting hurt. Where you're like, holy shit!
And that is the adder, is that thank God nobody was hurt, right? And to me, it's like now I become a protector or a guardian of life because of that. No, don't do that. That's something you can't do.
Just how important that curiosity is to continue leaning into it, but that there are boundaries. The realization that others can be hurt or even impacted, I think, is something that took a lot of us years to learn. I mean, I was well into my late teens before I feel like I was conscious of my impact on others. And I think it's really profound how an experience like that shows very dramatically and deeply inside of you, like just that the repercussion for the choices and stuff we make. But also I think it's a window to just how powerful we are in relationship, in our actions, and those ripple effects that can come. And it's beautiful, and I'd love you to speak more about this, Tony. Beautiful, like you saw that potential negative ripple of choosing those things that maybe someone else gets hurt, but you turned that into instead choosing, because of the boundaries that you had, choosing to impact people in positive ways, using that curiosity to lean into relationship, to know more about somebody, to develop depth. And so I'm curious at just some of the trajectory out of that story, how you use that to reframe that, your relationships, your impact, your curiosity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point, because, what in life, what textbook or what event, normal event, could you have ever picked up in a book or video that would have taught you that same lesson? Because that was the most extreme lesson that I've ever taught myself in a huge way. And I like what you pick up, is that I think it's made me more compassionate towards others and more thoughtful towards others in that regard, because life is so fragile, isn't it? When you think about it, is that somebody could do something so stupid and push a button or light a fuse and create loss of fingers, loss of arms, burned face, burned homes, burned families. And it has happened. But what did those people learn? Did it happen that, a child at 4 or 5 or 6 that knocked over something, a lantern? A lot of fires in Virginia were started by kerosene heaters or oil lamps that a lot of people used in the mountains that didn't have fires. So that became a big thought of mine now that I think about it since I was 12, and I think it became much more compassionate towards others, which is probably one of the reasons I started Smart Tribe, which is the Native American company. And I looked at the natives as I walked through the tribe in New Mexico. It's the Pueblos. And I reached out, and, having a child come to me and at Christmas, make me hot chocolate as a gift. And then in turn, in my heart, I felt as though I needed to help her. And of course, I think I mentioned this story the last time we talked, is that I asked her what Santa got her for Christmas on January the 6th. And she said, I wanted a bike, but Santa didn't bring me one this year. And so my friend who invited me, she's one of the tribal members, I'm getting ready to go out the door, and she grabs my arm and she says, Tony, don't do that. You'll have one happy native child, but 19 others unhappy. And I thought, wow, she's right. So reality of how much you do at certain times has to be staged. And then 3 years ago, I was bringing a truck of 19 bicycles to the tribe for Christmas. And it turned out it was during the pandemic and nobody was allowed to visit. So as time passed, Josie and I got back together and says, rather than giving, why don't we help? So we started a Native American company to help the natives grow, learn through education to empower them to be better people. So I think that was probably the caption on that story from start to finish. And that really is, now that you've touched on that, Joe, is really kind of amazing repercussion on something that was so negative that trained me so well in a field that I don't think anybody in an extreme way could have ever reached that unless that same event would occur. Not asking, hey, viewers at home, don't do this, right? Something you don't even want to think about. But it did, the repercussions of it was tremendous.
I was going to ask you about your work with the natives, and I'm curious to hear more about that. And I also had a question too, because you're such a giver, you're such a caretaker, and I was curious. Like, I imagine either the moment you order the 19 bicycles, the moment those bicycles arrived, the moment you thought about those little girls' reactions. What is it that you experience inside of yourself when you receive the message or you see the impact on whoever you're helping? What is that experience like for you, emotionally, mentally?
I think
feel so amazing.
There's more stories that give you the answer, and I think the best way to do this is sitting at 8 and 9 years old at my grandmother's house, who was very poor, by the way. And every Wednesday night, my mother I would go to her house and help her clean. I would do dishes. I was little. I couldn't do a lot, but I did help her wash dishes. And as we're there would be a knock at the door. Mary Huff? And yes. And the voice would say, Mary Huff, I understand you serve the best cup of coffee in Roanoke. And this was a homeless man. My grandmother in 1965 called him hobo, that they would hitchhike on trains. And she would give them a cup of coffee. And what I saw in their faces was magical. Somebody who had nothing, that in one cup she was handing them hope. And to see and witness hope firsthand, not to be biased, because I was a child. I didn't know what a hobo was. This was just another man. Yeah, some of them were dirty, and yeah, some of them smelled. But was that one moment in time that I saw hope. And my grandmother gave each person hope and never turned away one person for a cup of coffee. I never felt endangered. I never felt threatened by these strange people. I always felt kind of a lot of love, right? And I never really saw them expecting it either. I kind of saw them hoping there was a cup of coffee. And I could have never imagined that one cup of coffee, one drink of water, one cup of tea that would have delivered such emotions, which gets me into one more story to answer your question, Dustin, which I think it rubbed off on me, was the Christmas Eve story of Baltimore. I just stopped at the ATM machine. and got the $100 to give to the neighborhood kids. And at the first light, there was a red light, and a lady came to my window Christmas Eve, December the 24th, knocked on my window and asked me, would you like some company? And, it's like I'm thinking of Christmas, the morning, kids getting up. And I looked at her and I said, why are you here? And she says, I have a 4-year-old at home. And I don't know what overcame me, but it was almost like hope again came to mind, my grandmother's house. Someone coming to the door. The intentions were different. The people coming for coffee was hoping to get something to drink. She was looking for something to help her child. That's what she told me. So I got out of the car, got out, wish I gave her more now that I think about it, but I gave her a 20. And she looked at me very confused and she said, what's this for? And I said, it's for you. It's Christmas Eve. And she stepped away. And when she turned around in tears and said, this is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me in my life, made me feel as the best I could possibly have felt in my whole life. That was the one event that changed me as much as the explosion, if you could relate to the degree of kindness, caring, and compassion that I had for her. I will never forget her face. And I could only imagine a 20-year-old with a child. What has she gone through? And then kind of Dustin, maybe getting more back. I have, to your question, I've been treated with love. I never saw anything else. My parents never cursed. My parents didn't beat me. They didn't yell at me. Even between themselves, they never yelled at each other. So I grew up like, Leave It to Beaver, in a world that was created for me. I said created in a perfect way. So I thought this was the world that people live in, but it's not. And when I see anything less than that, it actually hurts. I feel bad for others that have alcoholic parents or mean, abusive parents. And things like this, I find very disturbing. And in my own way, I try to reach back out and compensate with a cup of coffee, might be a $20 bill, but it's more than that. It's that hope that you try to pass on to someone else that makes a difference in their life.
Goosebumps. I was in gratitude, playfully teasing with you when you and I met up, I think a couple months ago, where I think I had goosebumps, 15, 20 times in our conversations. I was actually thinking about that story that you just told about the $20 bill, and I teared up thinking about how beautiful the moment is when she looks back. And it's like that emotional exchange from human to animal, even, right? Like sentient being to sentient being it is so, I think, a perfect example that what most of us are wanting out of this life is so not tangible. Can we utilize the tangible things to create the beauty inside? Like you said, the hope. And there's such a beautiful array of emotions that I think as humans, like as a currency, like how can I give that and exchange that? And I think it's so cool where on one side, people that grew up in a Leave It to Beaver setting, this would be so off their radar, they go the other way. Because they're just they're just in a whole different mindset. So I'm wondering too, like it sounds to me like you had that experience at 12 with the explosion. You saw your mother's love. You saw her helping people and expecting nothing in return. It's like you are aware of what you were given and that gift. And it's like, if anyone else isn't having that, I want to do my best to give that to as many people as I can, because it seems like you're grateful for what you received and were given as a gift in your childhood. And it makes me wonder too, and feel free to go anywhere with this or answer it, or if another story comes up, whatever resonates, I'm curious. Was there any awareness you had? I mean, is that the oldest memory of just seeing, like almost modeling what your mom and like your parents did? Or did you have an inner knowing as a kid? Was there any extra element of this that you feel is connected to like you or your soul? or is it just my environment and I learned and I grew and I just want to share it and I want to give that as much as I possibly can? Like, what comes up with
Well,
that?
I think there's
I'm
a
curious about that.
connection with DNA. I believe there's a DNA,
Okay.
and I believe there's a spiritual component of being a better person that you could possibly be. My grandmother did things so much that she would give until it hurt. I had the opportunity to come to California, my first trip in 1975, with her in a Corvette. And every hotel, we stayed at Ramada Inn, and she would always leave $3 for the maid. And I wouldn't have done that. Not that I have disrespect to maids, but she said, Tony, they work very hard for what they do. And we went to a store, and she always used Prel shampoo, the green bottle, and she dropped it and broke it. And it's $1.15. I'll never forget the price. And she said, I want to see the manager. The manager comes over and she says, I want to pay you for this. And he says, oh, no, it's okay. I'll just write it up as damaged goods. And she says, oh, no, I insist. And I looked at him. I says, I've been traveling with her for 3 days. And if you don't take her money, she won't sleep tonight. Right? And that's an interesting balance, because here's a woman who maybe had 2 or 3 dresses to her name, but she loved life and she didn't want to take anything from it. It was almost like an Indian nature, right? An Indian culture way of living off the land, to never scar it, but to always love what you have. And if you have $1.15 to pay for something you broke, by golly, I'm going to do it. And that part of my grandmother was just absolutely beautiful, because when I made that trip with her in the car for 4 days, when I finally got to California, that was one of the best trips I could have ever taken. She loved it. She would have never had the opportunity otherwise. And I got to know my grandmother in a way that, with 4 days in a car, was just a funny thing. I had a Corvette that I bought in high school. Dumbest thing I ever did, but I had a Corvette in high school. And we're driving down the highway, and there were 2 girls in a Camaro, and we were checking each other out and waving at each other. And, you're driving I-40 from Virginia to California. You passed each other 3 or 4 times. Everybody stops for the same amount of time. Everybody gets gas. So you're almost facing each other. So we passed each other 3 times. Finally, we stopped at the same gas station. My grandmother comes back. She is laughing. She's got this big white hat on, and she's laughing. She's belly laughing. She can't stop laughing. I said, Grandma, what are you laughing at? She says, Tony, the 2 girls in the Camaro? And I said, oh, yeah, She says, they met me in the bathroom, and they said, how in the world did you catch this guy in the Corvette? And she was laughing. She says, that's my grandson, right? But just, that was my trip, right?
I just have such a appreciation for your ability to clarify, to see, and to reshare, actually to be able to see the lessons in what you're modeling in these experiences happen in your life, to actually sit with those and allow that to transform you, and to see it. I think it's such a gift that you're able to then reshare to others, that you're resharing with us right now. And it really is a unique thing to not only learn from life, sadly, but the ability to know what those lessons are and see that and reshare that and recreate that for other, as I've seen you do in your stories. Right. And just have a lot of gratitude in this moment for that.
I appreciate you.
I was wondering if you had absolutely. And curiosity is just around if there was a mentality or a framework that you use to set with that, to learn from your own experiences and the things happening around you that we could use in that, because it just seems it's been so powerful. You have such a clarity and on those lessons.
Well, it's interesting. I think with each step of life, there have been certain tools that I've implemented, and almost in the same way, Dustin, in the breathing exercises, that I was so stressed when I moved to California away from home, because I'm now realizing Los Angeles isn't the country of Virginia. And, Virginia, I grew up with 300 people in the entire town, right? It was really small.
Yeah.
And when I moved to California, I started to think back when I started taking martial arts, and I would get there after school at 2:30 and our class would start at 6. But my martial arts instructor would teach me how to meditate. And when he first told me about meditation, he says, look at a spot and clear your mind. Breathe, deep breathe through your nose, relax, hold it, just like Dustin did. And interesting that I found something, it was an audio tape that I love picking up at car washes. I'd pick up, learning, negotiation, things like that. And this one was called meditation. And I picked it up and I took it home in Torrance, California. And I'm listening to this guy say, grit your teeth, tighten your fists, tighten your neck, tighten your legs while breathing, right? And now do them all at once and let go. And that relaxed feeling was amazing. I don't know if you've ever tried that, but it simulated this ability to stress yourself out systematically and then relax. And what I found after that, and this is now 40 years ago, what I found after that, I'd be on the phone with a stressful conversation, and I felt my neck, my hand, my forehead wrinkled, and all of a sudden I'm catching myself and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is exhausting. And then while still in the call, catch myself and now relax. And so systematically, that was a tool that I learned early on to help with the mindset, because I think no matter who you are and what you do, if being nice or even a bad person, it takes some work, because you don't do either one naturally in my thought mind right now. Because if you want to be the person you set goals and you do them the following ways, right? And so going back to being nice and trying to help others takes some work. And one of the penalties of this has been no good deed goes unpunished, right? And it happens. You do something nice and the next thing you know, you're getting taken advantage of. And I hate that. I wish it wasn't the case, but I take it in the wash and you go back to the highlights of the story of the $20. That to me takes care of anything. I mean, that one event is enough for my lifetime. But I see these people coming back, like one of the natives, the mother. She came to me and looked at me and she put her arms around me. And Indians don't hug people. I mean, they do not like the government, and nor do they like white people. Don't blame them. I get that part. But I've developed a trust with them. She came up, she puts her arms around me. She says, whatever you do, please don't give up on us. And that meant a lot. And that's something that I use to reflect on, of kind of framing where I need to be and what I need to be doing. Because those reference points in time of striving to not only be better, like the book In Search for Excellence, I try to be better, but I'm not perfect, right? And I think at the end of the day, Dustin, you've seen it, my intentions are good. And that's what I strive for.
Yeah, that just made me think of your book Gateways. And I was curious what you would like to share about that, your passion behind it, your intention behind it, anything that comes up. I love to hear some more about that as well.
I just thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah.
I finished Gateway. I think it was published and released January, February. The reviews have been excellent. It is available on Amazon. But I think what it is, it's accumulation of my past 40 years done in poetry. And the best reference is the back cover is Gateways, is the gate into the business in New Mexico. It's called Smart Tribe. And I walked through these really old gates of this Pueblo looking building. And I thought, wow, I'm stepping into a place that I've never been before, and how uncertain it is, but how the hope of making this entrance through this gate means everything to other people. And whatever comes out at the other side is a journey, not only for me, but the natives that are involved. And so now the natives are getting more involved with events. They're getting more involved with the community, and they're engaging and communicating in such a way that I feel very grateful that they're doing these things. So that's, one part. I bought a Cobra, and I had a 1965 Cobra that I was driving around, and that poem is there. The heartbreak of life is there. Marriage is there. The hopes that we all have. The silence of night and fog coming into the bank while you hear the foghorn from the lighthouse is all written in this book. And I'm now starting to see people reference it on Facebook, that one woman is telling this other woman on Facebook, you've got to take it. This is the best book to read during your time, because it's about time that you spend yourself in events that you experience that are very heartfelt. And I think that and those things is really Gateways, because each event has been my experiences over 40 years of really helping others become a better person.
Goosebumps again, man. It's beautiful.
Just so grateful for, again, you bringing up the book, and it reflects back to the clarity I was speaking about earlier, with your ability to see and learn from not only people you've modeled in your life, but the experiences you've been through, and how impactful that can be for others. So I'm really just excited to actually dive into the book myself and just continue to learn from the experiences you've had and the life lessons, and your ability to share those in a way that others can receive and model.
Well, there's one other thread of the book I need to put the plug in. All profits from the book goes to Girl Power Grants. And Girl Power Grants is a beautiful organization that my beautiful three little cousins that started at 11 to 12, the oldest one is 16, or the youngest is 16, the oldest is 24. They're three girls that's been involved. As of today, they've given out $80,000 in grants to children, girls that have not been able to get into college. And these are grants that they just gave out. I think a new grant, I think it was $5,000 to help the kids. And I think that's the whole message behind, Gateways, is the network of things we can do for each other, to help each other, and to help others to become better people. And I think if you can, take that message and expand it into other areas, I would really appreciate that, because that's really my goal in life, is to help others, help other people, help individuals, helping one person at a time to become a better person.
We will absolutely share that. And also interested in what the genesis for stepping into the book, for writing the book. I mean, it's evident that your passion is to help others, but how did it come about? Like, this is another way that I can do that.
That's an interesting question. So I had been writing for years, probably since 75, 78. And these are things that I typically never share up until probably August of last year. So I started sharing some, and the more I shared, people would say, I stopped using Facebook until I saw what you're writing. Now that I see with what you're writing, every day I come back to read what you've written. And I thought, well, that's a very interesting thing to say. So I wrote some more, and shared more, wrote some more, shared more. And I love taking pictures. So the pictures I was taking, so I've now added the portrait to the photographs. And the more I did that, the more the feedback was just absolutely incredible. So it's really funny. A guy, Ken, who lived in Los Angeles, is now living in Roanoke, Virginia, which is where I grew up. So I grew up in Roanoke and moved to Los Angeles doing the same job at, Raytheon Used Aircraft. He moved from Raytheon Used Aircraft to Roanoke, Virginia. So out of the blue, after 10 years, he sends me a message. He says, Tony, what you've been writing and the photographs that you've been posting, I would be happy to put a book together for you. And I thought, what an interesting network, right? So I said, seriously? And he said, oh yeah. He says, I do editing, I do proofing, I do layouts, I do typesets, and I use a publisher in New York, and I can have everything done for you. I said, all right. So roughly in October, November, I started sending him everything. And then I thought, in my mind, to be honest, it was like, is this going to be a crash and burn, or is this going to be something that's going to be great, right? And or mediocre. And so he started sending back what he was doing, and I'm going, wow, this is beautiful. He took the one poem on the back, he put the cover, he put my pier and beach and sunset photograph for the whole wrapping of the front cover to the back cover, and he wrote up how we met, and how we met is almost as beautiful as Joe, how we've met. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. So now I'm like, okay, well, how is this going to go over? So it started selling, and I got a lot of reviews, and I've gotten people from school that I haven't talked to in 40 years send me up and says, hey, Tony, I bought your book, and I love it. My wife took it from me. Oh, perfect. That's it. Thank you. And that gate that just popped up sitting in the cover is the gate of Smart Tribe in New Mexico. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful gate. And, the poem, is all about going through a gate and taking chances and becoming bold and brave about the things that you do. And so he finished it. We had it published and released in February. And Dustin, you got one of the first copies. And so thank you for that plug, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was a great question, Joe. Yeah, it makes you wonder. I'm curious if you could broadcast a message to the whole world. What would you want people to know? Like, what would you want to share? What would the message be?
I think stay true to yourself is very important. Stay on the path. Don't deviate from that path. Routines and consistency means everything. And I think if you stay true to your goals and your objectives, I think you will have a much better life, because when you start deviating, you go down to a rabbit hole that not only you had no place being, no one should be there. And, that can be defined however you want. But, Dustin, really your life, your family has been a beautiful blessing for me. And, one of the experiences I mentioned is your grandfather. And when we first met, how much in common we had with one another, and the stories we shared and the laughter that we shared. And then all of a sudden your grandmother comes into the picture, and they're equally as fun and laughter. And what I got out of that is just be yourself, right? Be who you are, and who you are as a person, the people will accept you. And if they don't accept you, you don't have to force yourself upon anybody. But if somebody's there that wants to be a part of your life, they will. And your grandmother, as much as you, Dustin, as much as your grandfather, as much as your sister, has always been a part of my life in a good way. And I think that's very key, if you're willing to give, and if you're willing to give your heart, and if you're willing to give $20, give it without any condition, because it's that lack of condition that the rewards that you get in return are so much more of a blessing than anything else that you can imagine. That smile and thinking about you and saying to you that that is the nicest thing as anyone's ever done to my life rates on a scale that I can't even define, right? And so that to me is, I think, the most important message to relay to others. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and don't deviate from your path. Develop the routines and the patterns that are successful and help you as well as help others on the way, to tug on and bring someone along with you if needed.
I want to ask a follow-up question. That was so amazing. Is you mentioned routines, staying true to yourself. Say someone is living a life, and I want to speak humbly. Joe and I have talked about stuff like this in the podcast before, but I'll just say for myself, there was a good portion of my life where I wasn't true to myself, and I wasn't just being myself. And I think in one sense, my logical mind's like, yeah, that's so simple. Like, dude, just be yourself. Like, come on, you can't be anybody else anyway. It's like, what are you doing? And I think, I don't think I know, I've met a lot of people where there has been a struggle there. And I don't want to get into my theories of why. That's another conversation. But for you, you're mentioning habits and things. And ever since I met you, I mean, most of my life, you are you. You are beautifully Tony Mauk. And I'm wondering, for anyone who struggles with that, is there any advice or tips you could give in your own journey of a habit or a meditation, or maybe it's thinking of your childhood, anything you would say that could inspire them to try something new or have a different thought or an approach on how they can do that more if they struggle with it?
I think as things become hard, and they always do, life is not easy. Life is not an easy road, no matter how you look at it or how you approach it. I think at worst case, when things are tough, is to have a spiritual connection, whatever spiritual connection you may feel, but to have a spiritual connection to where once things are beyond what you can control, there's something in not only body, but in spirit that can help you, and look for that advice. And that guidance, I think, is so important, because, what happens in a hospital when you have a dying child? What do you hear on the TV? What do you hear and witness? Please, God, don't let this happen. And why does it take such an event to get to that point? We shouldn't be at that point. We should be more of that mindset in our daily lives, to be thankful to be living, to be thankful to eat and have food and have shelter over our heads. Because there's a lot of people out there, especially today, that are on the streets that have nothing. And, Susie and I have several times, we'll spend Sundays feeding the homeless. We'll bring a carload of soups and sandwiches and coffees. And oh my gosh, it's interesting to see a group of 20 people so appreciative to have their first meal for the day, maybe even the first meal for a couple days. And it's very heartfelt to hear someone genuinely thank you for that meal, almost like the cup of coffee or almost like the $20 bill. They each have an interesting response to give you. Some are shy, some are embarrassed, and some are like so thankful to see you. So, that I think is very important to others, to don't forget where you came from, and always remember to be kind and good to other people.
That was great clarity again, Tony, just on the message. And I want to just repeat and reinforce that difference of having a consistent and leaning on that spiritual connection, developing that in someone's life. And it is amazing that sometimes life has to give us those opportunities, those intense moments where we realize that maybe we don't have that connection. But I think seeing that as an opportunity to develop that, instead of being frustrated with that situation in your life for that happening, it's a gateway to developing that connection spiritually to the depth of who we actually are, and creating a foundation out of that. Such a neat model that you've expressed in that. I really appreciate
I've
that.
had the blessing of being involved with many families that have different walks of life. I mean, to sit down with a Native American whose family lived in the United States for 5,000 years is mind-boggling. And to sit there with them and have them tell stories that have been told to them about the Spaniards coming through the fields with their breastplates on their armor reflecting in the sun to come capture them for slaves in the 1600s. It's just an amazing thing. But then to be trusted to a point where they now take the time to explain to you what is happening during a spiritual tribal dance, because everything is spiritual with the natives. They love life. There is nothing about life that they don't respect. When they do a buffalo dance, it's about hunting the buffalo and taking the life of the buffalo. And, that's interesting. And when you think about it, it's like you really have to digest this, because that all day is done in prayer and meditative states and giving of life to others. So through the buffalo gives them life, clothes, and food for months, weeks. And one of the elders, caciques, they're now chiefs, are now caciques, which is a leader in Spanish, came to me and explained to me what happens during we watch the Indians on TV, and they explained to me what that was. And it's amazing. I'll share it with you because it's on the same theme. In the beginning, we come to you, dear Creator. We come to you out of respect of you granting us the opportunity of life. And it's through this life that you give us opportunity for rain. Please, dear Creator, grant us with water to water our fields, to grow our harvest, to help and give us health and life and food for all. That's what they're doing. And when I heard that, I'm almost in tears, because it is the most humbling, most basic thing in life that you can realize. And when you hear in reflection of history that they were natives and they were savages, they weren't savages. We were the savages, taking over their land, taking their children to private schools to educate them away from the tribal ways. And I'm thinking, no. We missed something. They lived here for 5,000 years. They still live together in peace. They don't kill each other. But yet we're here creating killings, taking over the earth. And what did we have to learn from them? And I think if somebody takes the time to listen, and I think that's the other part, is listening to your environment, listening to others, because there's some people out there that have beautiful stories to tell. And the Native Americans have the most awesome life and stories to tell. It's not rich in things, it's rich in life. And to love your brothers as they love each other, I feel honored to be able to have been a part of many of their events.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's been an honor and a privilege, and so much fun, man. Getting all my goosebumps again.
Such a joy, Tony, just to develop more relationship and hear more about you, and just so encouraged and inspired by the work that you're actively doing.
Thank you, Joe. Reach out to me. Let's stay in touch.
Until
Thank you.
Next time.
Goodbye.